Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for The Young Folks. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is, of course, my co-creator of Cinemaholics, freelance film critic Will Ashton.
Hey, yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to be clear. That wasn't from your introduction, but I'm happy to be back all the same.
I just don't want people to think that you live in the pits. And a bit of an update. You are no longer at Cinema Blend. And
yep, that's correct.
There you go. That's it. All right, moving on.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to make an announcement about it, but yeah, that's...
Sorry, I didn't mean to spring that on you, but I did think about it when I was introducing it. It's like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
So in case anyone's curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gun for hire at the moment, so if you have a site or a publication or somewhere that pays and you're like, hey, let's get some Will Ashton on there to spice things up, I'm all ears. You can reach out to me however you can reach me, so how about that?
And you'll be glad you did. Now, as for our podcast, you can find more episodes of it, including our full archive, all episodes we've ever done on cinemaholics.com. You'll also find our written reviews, video reviews, all kinds of fun stuff like that on our website. Check it out. Don't forget to email us. We're always happy to read your emails and interact with you. As always, our email is cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget, too, we also have some new merch up on the site. So if you don't want to head over to our Patreon and check out all those perks at patreon.com/cinemaholics, you can go to our website and you can still get Cinemaholics merch in time for the holidays. So don't wait. Check that out now. We have a new hoodie coming out now that's going to match the design of the t-shirt because I got multiple requests because apparently the t-shirt design is pretty popular. I'm wearing it right now, and Will, you're seeing it on me, or you saw it on me a second ago. What do you think?
Oh man, I am so jazzed about this t-shirt. I think it's probably the best thing we've got as far as the new merch. I think it's a nice fit.
Better than the new shot glass.
Well, the new shot glass is the same as the original, just has the new logo, right? That's what.
True.
This is like a whole this is totally different. Like this is a t-shirt
this is a statement
exclusive as far as the look and design of it. And I think it looks pretty sharp. But I think if anyone gets it, they're a fan of the show, they're gonna rock that. Their local multiplex are gonna be looking sharp, and they're gonna turn some heads, and they're gonna be the talk of the town, maybe. At least that's what I hope.
Couldn't say it better myself. Last thing, if you'd like to support us, but hey, things are strapped and you want to do something financially easy, you could always leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, but only if you want to tell us what you think and like about the show. It's got to be honest. No lying. If you hate us, I mean, I don't know why you would give us a 5-star rating if you hated us, but yeah. I
mean, iTunes has that big no lying rule that they incorporated, and you know, if you even try to lie, they just nix the review and they're like, try again.
Yeah. Fortunately, people never lie on the internet, so we don't have to worry about that there. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about a bunch of really awards-level films. I guess one of them isn't technically. That's Benedetta. I mean, is it an awards-level film? I think so, but that's a bias. It's not really in the running for anything compared to the other two films.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Tis a season, though. It's in the it's on some people's best of the year list. So I mean, it is considered among the best of the year's offerings, depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think critics like it, and we're talking about two other critical favorites. Maybe that's a better way to contextualize these three films, because we don't have a major release coming out this past weekend. The cinema is getting ready for West Side Story. That's, of course, going to be a pretty big deal, I think. Encanto is still in theaters. Ghostbusters Afterlife is still in theaters. So we got a little bit of a break this week. The Power of the Dog just hit Netflix. It's been in limited release for a while, though, and we're finally be able to talk about The Power of the Dog. Then we'll talk about Benedetta and Come On, the new Mike Knowles film that is also in limited release now. So this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to be getting into the nitty gritty here. So definitely stay tuned for those reviews. I know you're probably listening and you're like, I don't know if I've never heard of these films, but we guarantee you that you will get something out of the review, I hope. But I guess I can't guarantee that. Anyway, let's start with The Power of the Dog.
25 years since our first run together. 1900 and nothing.
It's a long time.
What you doing?
Getting mixed up with her.
You are marvelous, Rose. We were married Sunday.
What little lady made these?
I did, sir.
Well, Brother Phil?
Open up the gate, let him out.
You sure he's not ready?
Go on, let him out.
He's just a man, Peter. Only another man.
So The Power of the Dog is probably Netflix's best shot at getting Best Picture since probably 2019 with The Irishman, I guess, or Marriage Story, one of those two. Definitely a big swing for Netflix. They want this thing to win all kinds of awards for Benedict Cumberbatch, who stars in the film. And I think he's also getting some love in other critical circuits, maybe Kirsten Dunst, although I don't think she got anything for any of the awards that are coming out so far for like HCA. I don't think I saw her name on supporting or anything. But we also have Jesse Plemons in this film, Cody Smith McPhee. It is a Western, and one of the reasons The Power of the Dog has been turning heads, first of all, it is an adaptation of the 1967 novel, also called The Power of the Dog, which I actually have over here on my desk. And that one's by Thomas Savage. And this is also the latest film from Jane Campion, who it's been a while.
12 years,
Let's put it that way.
Right?
12 years, I think. Was it 2009?
Yeah.
Was her last film, Bright Star?
Her last feature film, at least. I think she's done some short films since she had Top of the Lake.
Top of the Lake. And the 2013 miniseries. And she also co-directed a miniseries called Top of the Lake China Girl in 2017 or 2018. So yeah, that's what she's been up to.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if Top of the Lake was an anthology series and like she just did 2 seasons of it. But yeah, I know that's been the big thing for her for the past decade or so. But yeah, now she's finally back on the silver screen, or at least on the screen, because a lot of people are primarily going to see this film on Netflix. But yeah, she's back again. That's what counts.
She has a wonderful filmography. I haven't seen all of her films, but I am a fan of the ones that I have seen. Her first film was Sweetie, which I'd say probably draws a lot of comparisons to this film.
I thought it was a Two Friends was her first film. Two
Friends was a TV movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Sweetie's her first feature film.
Yeah. That's more what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that's funny though, because it's like Sweetie and Bright Star are actually the only 2 I've seen besides The Power of the Dog. I've actually have not seen The Piano or In the Cut or Holy Smoke. I think those are like the other 3 big ones that she did. Unfortunately I haven't seen them.
I'm not like the biggest I don't know which of her movies are probably best known in pop culture. I'd say probably The Piano and In the Cut are my big suspicions. Now, Piano was a big awards contender, and I think one of the reasons people remember The Piano, or at least a lot of cinephiles and film critics remember it, is because it was a big first in a lot of ways for Jane Campion and women in filmmaking, right? It was the first film she was the first female filmmaker to receive the Palme d'Or. She was the second woman to be nominated for Best Director.
Yes.
And both those acclaims were for The Piano. And I think Best Screenplay, I want to say original screenplay, went to The Piano as well. So awards heavy film, great film too. I mean, I don't know if you like The Piano, but I do.
Well, that's what I was trying to say is actually Piano is a big blind spot for me. The only 2 Jane Campion movies I've seen in full are Sweetie and Bright Star, besides Power of the Dog.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I highly recommend The Piano. Always a good film to catch up on. Great Holly Hunter film. Probably one of her best. Although I have a soft spot for, of course, Incredibles and Broadcast News. But
sure.
Yeah, and Raising Arizona.
Yeah, of course.
Now, that said, this new film, The Power of the Dog, it's funny because as I was watching it, I guess you wouldn't have picked up on this, but there were moments of it that definitely, like there's a piano in this movie. But very different film. This one, of course, takes
that wasn't lost on me, to be clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure you're well aware that there's a piano in The Piano. This movie takes place in Montana around 1925. So right before the Great Depression, the stock market crash of 1929 or whatever year it was. The film follows 2 ranch owners who are brothers. One of them is named Phil, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. The other guy is named George. He's played by Jesse Plemons. And it's kind of a slow start, but we kind of slowly see a romance or a courting develop between George's character and an inn owner named Rose Gordon, who is played by Kirsten Dunst. And right away, we see that Phil is a very prickly person compared to his brother. His brother's kind of mild-mannered. He doesn't have a lot. He's very reserved, very stoic. His brother Phil, though, Cumberbatch's character, is a bit aggressive. He's got toxic masculinity like written across, his britches. This guy is just kind of like a walking mess in terms of like he's very dusty and dirty. He makes fun of people. When we first are introduced to, and when he's introduced to Rose and her son Peter, who is played by Cody Smith-McPhee, he relentlessly mocks Peter. Nevertheless, they end up moving in with the Burbanks, the brothers, later on in the film after George and Rose have been together for a while. Peter is coming back. I think he was at an Ivy League school, I want to say, learning to be a surgeon. He comes back for the summer, and that's where the majority of this film takes place. So, Will, this is a movie that a lot of people have been saying is, it's a slow burn Western for sure. It's definitely, not the old West. It's the new West in a lot of ways. And people are saying this is a fantastic film, great direction, great writing, the score by Johnny Greenwood, getting lots of praise. Yeah, do you agree with all the accolades?
Yeah, I was going to say the second for Johnny Greenwood this year second or third, depending on if you've seen Licorice Pizza yet.
Right, which he didn't do a lot for Licorice Pizza, but yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I certainly had high expectations to answer your question. I didn't read the book. Did you read it, or you just have a copy of it on hand?
I just have it, and I'm actually really excited to dig into it. I've dug into the screenplay because I have that as well, and I started reading the book, but I'm not that far into it.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even without reading the book, it's clear that the movie has a novelistic quality outside of the the chapter breaks and a lot of just the way the movie presents information. It almost kind of feels a bridge, like you're seeing a longer novelistic story that we're kind of getting like the nitty gritty details of.
Yeah, you can tell things are left out.
Right, which I find to be pretty fascinating in terms of approaching it as an adaptation. And so I wasn't sure if you had read the book, so I could kind of pick your brain a little bit as far as like what is and isn't in the book. But looking at the movie as a film, I certainly quite enjoyed it. It's a type of film, though, that I was trying to remember the term you used on your YouTube channel. Like you coined a term, I think it was like a wait for it Western or something along those lines. And I feel like it's a type of film that when I saw it and when I initially sat on it, I was like, yeah, it's like a good film, like a good, solid, sturdy Western. I was trying to kind of figure out, though, like why it was getting as voluminous a response as it was. Not that it wasn't warranted, but I was just kind of figuring out like, okay, like I think it's a good film. I think it's solid. I think it's hard to argue otherwise, but like, how is this like getting the response that it's getting? But the more I've reflected on the film, and the more I've really sat with it and thought about what it's doing and how it approaches the genre and what it's saying therein, especially as I think more about the second half of the film, it's a type of film that I've grown to really appreciate more and more. And I'm excited to revisit the film. I was hoping to see it twice, but just time didn't really allow for this episode. But it's a type of film that as I keep thinking about the film, I only grow to like it more because of how it's tackling these characters, how it is using those characters to discuss the theme of masculinity, like you said, but also just how it approaches the genre and how people reflect on genre, not only as far as like movie stars and how we see these characters, but also like how the characters see themselves, how they feel their place fits into the world, and like how they have to fit into certain archetypes, how they have to feel like masculinity is this sort of facade or like this identity that they have to describe or fit into, whether they feel it's appropriate or not. And it's this type of film that I think only gets richer as you really reflect back on it more and more.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think that it's definitely a lot to chew on. And when I was talking about it in my review, what I found so impressive about the way that this film kind of presents its case. And what's impressive to me is like how successful it is at doing and saying what it wants to say. And I think those things involve, just really capturing the misery of the human experience on the frontier, just how difficult and dirty and repressive it was for people who are otherwise artistic. There are a lot of, moments in this film where you just have people who want to be themselves, but they can't. And the loneliness that breeds out of people, it causes them to lash out. And I think what's interesting about that is like we've seen that in Westerns before. That's nothing new. But usually when we get that in Westerns, it's not as cerebral as this. It's not as realistic. Usually it just involves gunfights. We're going to resolve everything by having a big face-off, at the saloon. We're going to have a big old brawl. But instead, this movie is more about the violence that doesn't happen. It's more about like the unspoken aggression and like just people messing with each other because they're bored, like is really what it comes down to. And like the emotional trauma and abuse that happened on the Old West, or New West, we should say, compared to what we see in, Westerns, where it's more about like, we got to save the town, or, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was that sort of thing that I thought was really impressive, especially for a movie that came out, or a novel that came out in the 60s.
Yeah. But also like I'm gonna have to be delicate how I phrase this because I don't want to spoil anything, but I also really appreciate how the movie, it's about these characters who, like you said, they're all withholding this information, and the movie kind of mirrors that as well. Like it kind of slowly reveals its cards over time. But what is apparent throughout the film is that like there's this sense that like we have to kind of put on these identities, we have to kind of show these faces because it'll be worth it in the long run. Like we kind of have to like drudge through these things because ultimately that's what's expected of us and it'll be rewarding in the end. But then for certain characters, like they kind of put on this identity, they do this thing, and then we eventually find out like, they just ultimately live a pretty sad life because they have to assume this sort of identity, and then like it doesn't really pay off in the end because the way of the West is never too forgiving for most folks. So that kind of brings a subdued sort of mournful quality to the film that I think is very true and fitting to the Western genre, but also gives this raw sort of tenderness that I feel like the genre is not always willing to explore or dive into. And I think that's something that Jane Campion obviously is very interested in looking at here, and something that I think she's very adept at looking at. And it certainly makes for, I think, an enriching film, especially as you think back on more, and hopefully when you revisit the film, as I will hopefully at some point.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, Jane Campion is, I think, a master at tying and connecting her characterization, her characters, to the cinematography and the overall look and presentation of a film. She does this so well in Piano. It's a big reason why that film is as effective as it is, even though looking back on it, it kind of dated itself pretty quickly if you watch that film. That said, this film, it almost sort of reframes the way that Westerns are shot, because in an older Western, what you might get from even something more recent like News of the World or True Grit, you get the sweeping vista, right? You get the beautiful prairie, you get the frontier. And what that represented to a different audience who watched Westerns for different reasons back in the day was, look at this huge world that humans haven't corrupted yet. We have to prevent humans from corrupting it with violence and, trying to, mess up Mother Nature, think Dances with Wolves, whatever you want. And it's spoken of as like nature is beautiful. And in this movie, it still is that same sweeping vista, that beautiful, meticulous filmmaking, but it's contextualized against, look how empty and lonely this place is. It matches the characters. It matches how they feel like little specks who have nothing to offer and they can't get what they really want out of life. That's what I think Jane Campion is just so good at nailing. And I think that's a big reason why people who have watched a lot of films, so a lot of critics, are responding to this very positively, because it is sort of bringing up something that is very interesting if you're pretty well versed in the history of Western films and you're kind of ready for a film like this. That said, it requires a lot of patience. It really does. I mean, it's not like this film is, it's not laugh a minute. It's not a lot of action or spectacle. It's kind of doing something different. So I think that it's not the most accessible film out there for award season, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that that's what this film is, and it should be that.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I mean, that even comes down to the casting of Benedict Cumberbatch. I know we've discussed on the show in the past, like some of his roles where he tries to be an American, be it Doctor Strange, or I can never remember the name of the Guantanamo Bay movie he did.
Yeah, I forget too. Black Mass was the other one.
Yeah, I just remember, like, I think that review, whatever review I did for the show, just it was consistent of me making fun of the fact that Benedict Cumberbatch is trying to play like good old Southern boy. It's just like, howdy, y'all, my name's Benedict Cumberbatch. So the idea to me that he would be playing this kind of stoic Western ranch hand, I gave Jane Campion the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I was going into a little skeptical. Like, is he really going to pull this off? Like, I knew he was getting award buzz and stuff, but it's like, is he going to really pull this off? Like, I don't know. And I will admit, like, in the beginning, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, he's doing a good job, but like, I'm not quite buying this. But then, as we're alluding, as the movie goes on, it's like, that's kind of the point, right? Like the fact that like he doesn't really seem of peace with this place and this time is inherent to the character, and the casting of Benedict Cumberbatch for that reason is ultimately kind of brilliant. Like if it was someone like Josh Brolin or I don't know, like I'm trying to think of another modern actor that would feel more appropriate to this sort of.
Well, I think Brolin could have done it and done it
sure.
pretty well.
That's not. I mean, yeah, I was gonna say that, but like, I think it's not to say that someone like Josh Brolin couldn't pull this off. But I think the fact that it is someone like Benedict Cumberbatch, someone who inherently
like
is
an outsider.
Well, yeah, but like someone that like inherently is sort of not going to feel comfortable with this sort of role going into this. That lends itself to the character really well in this case. And like, it's not to say like, if Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be another Western someday, who the hell knows? But I mean, not to say that he wouldn't pull that off. But I think for a film like this, but as far as like Jane Campion's broad thesis for the film, I think that's a stroke of genius that, certainly I would not have expected even 6 months earlier.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there for the most part. And yeah, he's a complex character, but I don't think that's all you need for a performance like this to get the attention that it's getting. So currently, Benedict Cumberbatch is now one of the front runners. I mean, he was already, but I think it's solidified him as a front runner for Best Actor. His big competition, of course, is going to be Will Smith.
Yeah.
And a few other actors. I think Andrew Garfield from Tick, Tick, Boom as well, probably. Maybe. Now, that said, I think that one of the things about this performance, I really got to give it to Cumberbatch. What he does really well here, and why I think that casting works as well as you're sort of inferring, is because his character is so surprising. He's not a straightforward character. He's a character who does things and reacts to things in ways that aren't always predictable. And Cumberbatch is really good at selling it. Sometimes when you have a character who's written like that and written in a good way, right, where where a character will react to something happening in a way that's, that makes you gets under your skin, makes you be like, oh, what's going to happen next with this person, even if you dislike them. But sometimes when actors take on a role like that, I think this is why I say Brolin could have done this. I think he would have been good at that sort of thing that Cumberbatch is doing here, where it all feels consistent. Like when he suddenly shows like a soft side, it doesn't feel like a character turn out of nowhere. It actually feels inevitable. It feels like a true and honest facet of who this person really is. And so I think that's why people are really praising this performance, because I think Cumberbatch just really did the work here, and it's really great. And I think Campion is obviously fantastic at directing her actors, and they really got it right. What do you think of the other performances, though? Because we also have Kirsten Dunst and we have Jesse Plemons, married couple in real life. And, I've been a little bit back and forth with what I think of this like pair of performances. I like it more than I don't. But there were times in this movie where I certainly liked Dunst all the way through. I had issues with Plemons here and there where I felt like his character was sort of, there was something I felt like was missing. I don't know if it was a missing scene, or there was something about him that I wanted more of. Perhaps specifically his relationship with Phil. I had to sort of feel like the film was implying a lot of their relationship and what's like the source of his loneliness as a person. He even has one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Oh yeah, same here.
Where he is, dialoguing with Kirsten Dunst's character and just saying it's so great to not be alone. I mean, it hits. But aside from that, I just did not get a sense of this guy. What about you?
As far as it sounds like you're kind of disagreeing as far as the character or the performance, and I guess I feel separately as far as what your question is. But and before I forget, I mean, to piggyback off you're saying off of Benedict Cumberbatch, I do agree with you that like I'm not trying to undermine his performance or anything. I think he is quite good here. I just think the casting itself is a sort of unexpected stroke of genius that I think is really interesting to dive into. So that's kind of my broad thesis for what I was trying to say there earlier. But as far as Benedict or Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst, I was with Jesse Plemons all the way through. I had no issue with his performance. I thought he's actually probably my second favorite lead performance in the film.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think Jesse Plemons is always great. I think he's really shaping up to be a tremendous actor right now. And I don't think he's doing anything here we haven't seen from him. Like, I don't think it's not the same as like Benedict Cumberbatch, where it's just like, this is like a new shade to the actor that we haven't seen before. And that's why it's sort of, it's easier to champion that performance, I think. I can understand why Plemons' performance is going to be overlooked for that reason. But I think he is really, really good in this. And I think his performance, like you said, it's so intuitive and it's so nuanced in a way that I think he is perfectly cast for. And I think that scene that you're referring to is great. I agree, though, that I think my only issue with him is that the movie, in service of giving Cody Smith-McPhee and Kirsten Dunst more time in the narrative, it seems like his character has to kind of play second fiddle or kind of be regressed in a lot of ways from the narrative. And I don't know if that's because they're kind of cherry picking what they adapted from the book, or if his character kind of gradually fades in the background and the text as well. But I did find that unfortunate. But as far as Kirsten Dunst, I thought what they did with the character was good, and I'm always happy to see her. I think it's been like 4 years since she's been in a film or something like that, something crazy like that. But her performance, it's one I've kind of gone back and forth on, unfortunately. I do kind of like the theatricalness of it. It feels appropriate to like sort of like the type of performance that we would see in these old fashioned sort of black and white Westerns, where it's a little bit more theatrical, even like almost more melodramatic than some of the other performances here that are a little bit more reserved and lived in. It seems like that there's something interesting about how her performance feels a higher key than those, but at the same time, I felt like that almost kind of took me out of it at times. Like her performance seemed to be a different vibe than everyone else, and it didn't always work for me in that respect. But I don't think it's like an incompetent performance or anything like that. It just didn't always hit me in the same way that I felt like some of her other better performances have really worked wonders for me in the past.
I think I would take one of her more recent performances, The Beguiled, over this one, but I think they're of a piece. And it has been 4 years, because I think her last film was Woodshock, which came out right after.
Yeah, that weed movie that everyone forgot about. She's good in that movie, but it's unfortunately kind of a bore. So it's easy to be forgotten.
Oh, well, what are you going to do? Cody Smith-McPhee, I really want to give this actor a lot of props. You know, he was Nightcrawler in the X-Men movies. And he's been in, I think one of his most acclaimed roles was probably Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, The Road, Let Me In. Yeah, this guy's been in some great stuff. Paranorman, I think he was a voice in that.
Yeah. But, wasn't he Norman in that film, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
He's also another Western that would be a good double feature with this, but I don't know if it's one you've seen. Have you seen Slow West?
Slow West? No, I remember that was one that was on my list back in like 2018 or 2017, whenever it was.
Man, I really like that movie a lot. It's with Michael Fassbender. It's a really solid, overlooked Western. So if you really like his performance in this film, I would definitely recommend that film as well.
I think he's great in this because it must have been so challenging you have to hold your own against Benedict Cumberbatch in one of his like career best films. And I think Smith-McPhee doesn't miss a beat here. I think he has arguably the most important scene of the entire movie, which is the ending. And I think we don't want to talk about the ending, of course, but I think the ending, it's one of my favorite things about the movie. It's what I think takes the movie from being good to actually being like legitimately great. Once it really comes into focus what's going on. And I think some people have like argued about the implications of what happens in the end. To me, it's pretty clear cut though. Like maybe it's a fault of the movie translating from the book, but did you have any similar issues?
I think the gravity of it hits harder the more you think about it, but I don't think the film is necessarily subtle in what it's saying there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I think people have been like disagreeing. They've been saying like, no, it's not really saying that. I'm like, yeah, it is.
I don't think it's a secret though, because like there's even that like kind of narration that implies as much anyway. So it's like, it
almost says too much.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that was kind of a studio note sort of thing, but then again, I don't know if Netflix does notes, so I don't know.
My other flaw with this movie is that Thomasin McKenzie just kind of shows up. And it's like, wait,
yeah.
you're Thomasin McKenzie. Like, and I was very confused about that.
Yeah, I was going to say I feel bad because it's like I like Thomasin McKenzie a good bit. I think she's a promising young up-and-coming actress.
She's a great actor, but this is like casting overkill because it's not a significant character in this. I don't know if it's more significant in the book. And they were filming this last year. It's not like Jojo Rabbit hadn't been a thing yet, right? like. After Jojo Rabbit and Leave No Trace, I don't know.
I thought this was filmed in 2019, but I could be wrong.
No, they were filming this in early last year.
Okay.
2020.
Okay. But wasn't it before the pandemic?
But then it was halted. I think like they had to resume production like later in the summer or something like that.
Oh, really? Oh, that makes sense. But
yeah, because they were filming in New Zealand, so there was a whole mess involving.
Oh, yeah. But as far as Thomasin McKenzie's performance, like I said, I like her a lot, but I thought, unfortunately, she was not very good in this film. It's a minor role.
Bizarre, right? Like, how did that happen?
It's just, I think it mostly just comes down to the accent. It seems like she's really struggling with it in a way that, I don't really blame her. It's and I don't blame Jane Campion either. It's not like I don't think she's like poorly directed or anything. It just I just think I don't know, something happened there, and it's just like I think someone need to kind of push her aside and be like, hey, look, I know you're trying. This accent ain't working.
Well, didn't she have the accent kind of good for Old? But I guess that happened later, right? So maybe she had more practice.
Well, I thought it made sense in Old because like there's like that obvious childlike quality to it. And
that's true.
In Old, like it made sense where it's less like it helps to make you feel like it's kind of what's the word? Like it's more surreal, I guess, in that.
I wonder if that's like partly like why Shyamalan casted her. He was just like, this is just perfect.
Right. Yeah, and she kind of had that like mousy voice in Last Night in Soho, but I didn't mind it there for whatever reason. Like there's also like that kind of same like.
Well, the British accent kind of masks it, right?
Sure. And
in Leave No Trace, she's a lot quieter, right? She's a little bit like when she's talking, I don't know, it fits the story. So I don't know. We don't have to do a deep dive on her.
No. But what I'm saying is it's not her voice. It's like she's doing an accent in this. I think that's what doesn't work.
That's
like, it's
true.
Not,
yeah.
Like it's like her
Leave
trying
No
to do
Trace
like
was a little bit more invisible in terms of accents.
Right. And also like she's like doing a German accent in Jojo Rabbit. And I don't know, that seemed to work fine. But for some reason with this voice, it's like I just don't think the Southern accent, like she just never quite nailed it. I don't know if it was just like her and the voice coach or whatever. Like it just something didn't. It's such a minor role that it's not like it doesn't kill the movie or anything. It just every time she comes in, it feels like this weird like I don't know what you're doing here, kid, but I'm sorry, this ain't working. I'm sorry.
We've actually talked about it a lot more than I thought we would. But what are you gonna do?
It's one of the few complaints I have, to be honest, with the film.
Did you have any others before we wrap it up, or
complaints? That's the thing, right? Like, is that all the things I've kind of like felt maybe like mixed or negative on, I've actually kind of grown to appreciate with the film. Like I said, I think it's me having to catch up with the film rather than like the film doing anything wrong. Do you get what I mean with that? Like I feel like everything in this movie is very deliberate, very intentional, and I'm only going to appreciate more time, hopefully.
It's Scotch. It has a bitter taste, but you grow to appreciate the loads of flavors and what they really represent over time. Yeah,
and so I mean, I don't want to come out and be like, oh, this XYZ didn't work for me, and then like 2 months from now I'll be like, well, you idiot. That was clearly a deliberate choice by Jane Campion to show the plight of these woe-begotten characters or whatever. But
okay.
Yeah, whatever. So, I don't have any major complaints or anything. I think, like I said, I think it works, and I'm only growing to like it more as I reflect on the film, as you mentioned. So, I think it's a really solid film, and I think a lot of people are going to like it, especially if they are patient and really sit with it. I was fortunate enough to see this in theaters. I know a lot of people aren't going to have that opportunity. I think you watched it at home on Netflix, so that's not to say it's the wrong way to watch or anything. I think in theaters it's a better way because you can really sit and reflect on the film. It's easier just to be immersed. Yeah, right. It's easier to be immersed in it. You don't feel like that itch to check your phone as much and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think either way though, people are going to really appreciate this film if they sit with it and really give it its proper due. So I imagine this one's going to be considered among the finer films that Netflix has produced. And
for sure,
understandably so.
Yeah, I think this one's it's right now in my top 25 of the year. I think it's like number 24. and it could go up, it could go down, I don't know. But we still have a few weeks left of the year to go before we kind of wrap things up. And obviously this one is a favorite among a lot of critics and a lot of film enthusiasts to win plenty of awards, but I guess we'll have a fun conversation about that down the road. For now, though, let's play our Rotten Tomatoes game. Will Ashton, you're going to try to guess the Rotten Tomatoes score as we record this. Of course, the Rotten Tomatoes score always changes. But yeah, what do you think the critical Rotten Tomatoes score is right now out of 235 reviews? Lots of reviews counted.
Certainly has to be high. I can't imagine it's anywhere lower than 90%. My gut says 96%.
Spot on. You sure you didn't cheat?
I mean, unless I saw it, internalized it. I'm not looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score right now, so unless I internalized it at some point, that was just my gut. So
well done.
Yeah.
Congrats. You got it spot on. A second week in a row, you got one spot on. 96% of critics who have rated it have at least liked it. So it is for sure certified fresh. But what about the audience score? We have 500 plus ratings. We don't have verified ratings. So it's this is a tricky one probably then, because you can't just sort of assume everyone who reviewed it saw it, but we'll try to guess anyway.
I imagine most people are going to like it. I mean, some people may not like the politics of it, for a lack of a better word, for some reasons or another, but I think most people who are going to go out of their way to review it are going to like it. My guess is going to be 84%.
65%.
All right.
Yeah. Pretty low down the poll there. I think I have seen some negative reactions from just, like everyday people kind of expecting something probably a little bit more fast paced, not getting what they thought that they wanted. But yeah, it's hard to determine out of just 500 plus ratings and they're not verified,
I mean, if you compare something like The Harder They Fall, I can imagine some folks being like, this isn't my thing. Like faster, or The Harder They Fall is like a lot quippier. It's a lot faster. It's like, more up tempo beat. And this is obviously the opposite of that. It's like more reserved, kind of low downbeat type film. So I can get that, but that's still kind of sad to see.
I did a quick just look, because there's only 10 reviews that are rotten right now. And so I was kind of curious, like, do anybody we know, any Cinemaholics friends? Nobody that I know. I don't know about you, but I am seeing, some of the bigger ones, like, of course, National Review didn't like it. Discussing Film didn't like it, but that's kind of interesting.
Was that Armin White, or was that someone else for National Review?
Kyle Smith.
Okay.
I've seen his byline. But I don't think I've ever read anything from him.
Didn't he used to write for the New York Post?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the top critic, there is one top critic who didn't like it. And I was surprised to see it. Joe Morgenstern from Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Who look, he's not Richard Brody. Like he doesn't just he's not a contrarian, but I
wouldn't even call Richard Brody a contrarian, but I get what you mean.
I think he is in terms of like blockbuster fare. Not compared to Armand White, sure.
Sure. I don't know. I think he's always very thoughtful in his responses, but I get what you're saying.
Sure. Okay, well, that is The Power of the Dog. You can watch it right now on Netflix, or you can find it in limited theaters if you happen to be around a theater that's limited that has it. It is just 2 hours and 7 minutes long.
Yeehaw.
All right, our next film here. Yeehaw to The Power of the Dog. We're feeling the power.
Yeah.
Our next film here is a very different film in a lot of ways. It is the latest film directed and co-written by Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven being somebody who we love to see. Celebrated director.
Yeah, he's back.
He is back with Benedetta.
Yeah.
The first nunsploitation mainstream film in quite a while. I don't know if you could call it mainstream, but mainstream adjacent.
Sure. I mean, were the nunsploitation movies even mainstream? Those were always kind of more of like a grindhouse sort of thing, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Fair enough. Was there never like a big nunsploitation film ever? You're right, Sisters Act 2.
Well, I was going to say, are you counting the Sister Acts in that? Or are you talking more like pornographic?
So I'm talking more of the pornographic. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was an era. For
I guess
film,
more, that'd be more, this is more kind of softcore, I guess. This isn't like this isn't actual pornography or anything.
This wouldn't play at like a stag theater or something like that in the 60s, 70s. Now that said, Paul Verhoeven's made a lot of films. All right. He hasn't written a ton of films. But
I guess not. Yeah.
No, I think only like a handful, not even half.
His recent stuff, he's had more of a hand as far as the writing process, I think.
Well, not L. He didn't write L.
Okay,
right?
but I thought he wrote his like. Did he write Black Book?
He wrote Black Book, yeah.
Okay.
And Tricked.
And Tricked, yeah, that's what I thought.
But then before that, like, he didn't write anything since like the 80s. So he just, he doesn't have a pen. He lost it. But no, his last film was Elle from 2016, 5 years back. Did you like Elle, Ashton?
Yeah, good film.
I don't remember if I liked it.
Why not?
I didn't have Letterboxd at the time, so I don't have like a set like Letterboxd review. I remember seeing it in the theater and just not. I don't think I have an opinion. So I don't know.
It's kind of a thorny film, I guess, like, given the subject matter, but I think it's weird. That's the type of film that I think even he was just like, I expect this one to be one of my more controversial, divisive films. And that was like one of his more well-received, like unanimously praised films. And he was just kind of like, oh, really? Like, like, no, he's not going to fight it, but he's kind of like, oh, really? Like, this is the one that, like Starship Troopers, that gets a divisive response. Showgirls, that gets a divisive response. But Elle, that's fawning praise. And I think rightfully so. But just for him, that's kind of surprising.
His biggest films, like you mentioned, Starship Troopers, huge film for him. Great satire. One of those like sneaky satires. Showgirls, like you said, of course, Total Recall, RoboCop.
Yeah.
He's made other films, but those are definitely among the top of the top in terms of public awareness.
Basic Instinct is a big one. Yeah, that's a big one.
I forgot one.
Yeah, I think the big ones to compare this one to are probably Basic Instinct, Showgirls, and Black Book, right?
I haven't seen Black Book, so I mean, because that was 15 years ago, I want to say. So yeah, I never got to that film.
Sure.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think what's interesting to me about his films, just in general, is that I just think he's so good at making films that are really outlandish and just going over a certain type of person's head where people will take it seriously. And then the people who don't take it seriously are loving it the most because they see what he's doing. It's the same thing. Like, for me, that was Starship Troopers. Like, having that moment when, like, rewatching the film, I'm like, oh, like, there is a way, like, especially when you're a kid, to take that movie as just like a standard kind of sci-fi romp with, friends, learning to deal with, loss and the struggles of war. But then you watch it as an adult in a totally different way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of hard to see that movie as anything less than goofy. But I think
not when you're a kid, though, right?
I guess
or if you are the kind of person that the film is criticizing or parroting.
Right, but I guess you're saying that's like you could see that with like something like watch it with Men in Black, which is also a great film, but you could watch that and be like, oh, it's just like a fun, goofy kind of alien romp, whatever.
Right, then, where people watch it like unironically, kind of, like they're not in on the joke. I think that's something he's great at. I think he's doing that with Benedetta. Yeah. This nun film,
right?
It takes place in the 17th century during the Black Plague, which actually, now that I'm thinking about that, 17th century wasn't the Black Plague. That was like Renaissance, wasn't it?
I'm by no means a history buff, so
when I was watching the film, I took it because the bubonic plague is happening, unless it's like a different plague.
Sure.
Maybe they didn't say Black Plague, because if it was that, this would be taking place in like the 1300s, 1400s.
Let's just say he takes some artistic liberties with several things in this movie.
I'll have to do a fact, because I'm not a historical expert either, and this is based on a real person named Benedetta. Of course, artistic liberties across the board. It's actually to the point where it's kind of funny, a thing that happens at the very end where you're just like, really? You're gonna do that? In terms of tying this to real events in the way that he does. But anyway, this is about an Italian convent that takes in a new novice. We see her first as a young girl named Benedetta, and I forget, I don't know the young actor's name, but she's eventually played by Virginie Efira, and she is a very devout nun. Like, she plays things by the book, capital B book. We're talking about the Bible. She lives her life in full devotion to the Lord, to the point where she literally has visions of like action star Jesus coming in and saving her from bandits.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I mean, she takes the idea that she's married to Christ rather literally. Let's put it this way.
It's amazing. I mean, I just want to get this off the bat. This film is amazing. Like, I'm bowing down to it as we speak. Maybe that's sacrilegious.
I mean, I'm quite fond of it as well, but I will talk about that more once you finish.
I'm so excited. I can't
synopsis.
even finish the setup.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, but yeah, so she is a nun in this Italian convent, and she, things kind of change though as her as her life, she's like becoming a bit of an older nun now. She's in like, I want to say her 30s. There is a new novice who comes to town, and she
30s?
notices. I want to say she was in her 30s. Maybe she was in her 20s.
I thought she was like early to mid 20s.
Maybe I could just be totally misjudging because the actress herself is in her 40s, and I don't think they're going there. But
yeah, maybe you're right, because it was 18 years after the beginning of the film. So yeah, I guess it would be around her 30s. Yeah, you're right.
well, they kind of play it too, where like she's a little bit older, but she's not old. And there's a new novice who comes in who is younger. She is kind of like in her 20s. It's definitely hinted at. And her name is Bartolomea. She's played by Daphne Patakia, who I recognized in this movie, but I wasn't sure who she was. I think she's like maybe a Greek actress. I'm actually not totally sure. For Virginie Ifrey, I don't think I've seen any of her films before, but I know I recognize her too from like a couple of things I've probably seen in a trailer.
Yeah, she has kind of a distinctive look. Like she's obviously like conventionally beautiful, but there's something also kind of like wild about her eyes that's kind of intriguing in a weird. You know what I mean by that at all?
Yeah. Was she in Elle actually? She might have been in that.
Yeah, one of these two actresses was also in Elle. I'm trying to remember who it was.
I think it was her, and I'm just kind of forgetting. It's been a while.
Sure.
But yeah, I was going to bring this up. I did look this up. I saw somebody tweet about it, and I wanted to make sure, and I wanted to spring this on you. Did you know that she did the French dub for not one, but two Garfield movies?
Oh, nice. I did not know that. Who did she voice? Normal?
She voiced Liz.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. All right.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you a little dose of sugar in your day.
Yeah.
That's fun.
That's fun. Yeah.
For listeners who don't know, Will likes Garfield more than most. Okay.
More than most?
Yeah, I would say.
Garfield's a very popular comic strip, John.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to go there. So basically, this film, it sort of is about how these two women sort of form a bit of a taboo, unconventional bond. I don't want to say that it's like just a straight up like lesbian love affair, because I think there's much more to it than that. But I think you can tell that's what this movie is pretty quickly. I don't want to say much else, but basically this film becomes mayhem. It becomes paranoia. Basically, this woman in a power struggle for the future of the Catholic Church. And it's brilliant. Brilliant film.
Yeah. The thing as we've basically alluded to earlier, what I always find fascinating about Paul Verhoeven, and something that delights me to no end that continues in his filmography with this film, is that people sometimes try to dismiss him as like a provocateur, like someone who's just, basically trying to get a rise at people.
Yeah. Lowest common denominator, that kind of cheap filmmaking. And
like, is he going for cheap thrills? Certainly. I mean, he would not argue against that, right? Like he's obviously, he has a style. He likes to play things up, very theatrical, very over the top, very grandiose, and he doesn't shy away from that. But I don't think he makes a movie just to get a rise out of people. Like I don't think his movies are ever trying just to be exploitation for the sake of exploitation. Not that they would be lesser if they were, but I'm saying that I think, as we mentioned with Starship Troopers, like with RoboCop, like with any number of his films, he is using these sort of risque, taboo subjects, but he's talking about things that are obviously a lot deeper, something that interests him more thematically. And I think this film, as we'll talk about for certain variety of reasons, is no exception. And it just delights me that he's 83, I think, at this point, and he's still just coming out and making a movie like this cheeky, this mischievous, this this impish almost. But he's like this, this perverted old man that's just still doing this. It's very fun. I'm just very grateful to have Paul Verhoeven still making movies like this right now.
I agree with you so much. And I want to be clear about something. First of all, I'm going to do my best to avoid saying very specific things that happened in this movie because, I watched it pretty fresh, right? And like seeing these things happen for yourself is a gift, especially if you are the kind of person that this movie is gunning for. I obviously think that a lot of people will watch this and be horrifically offended and not enjoy it. I would not recommend it to anyone in my family whatsoever.
Right.
Very few people I would recommend it to.
Yeah, I mean,
but,
there are a few protests already happening for the film, at least in certain theaters. I think it's not like a Dogma situation where people are like getting on the news about it.
Cuties.
No, I'm just talking from a Catholical standpoint, like for people from
Sure,
the Catholic
sure.
Church protesting it. It's not like something like Dogma where they're like getting on the news because they're protesting it. It's just kind of more just like this one, like local theater is just getting like one or two local theaters are getting bombarded by people protesting the film for reasons I can, I guess, kind of understand, but it's also just like, aren't there bigger fish to fry right now? You know, not to
Sure.
not to
Yeah.
make it a biblical pun, but
We have an actual plague, you know, we don't need to
Exactly,
go after
yeah,
the movie that
right.
has a plague in it. Yeah. So I want to say, I think that we've had some fun. We've had some laughs in terms of just how tired the lesbian love affair movie sort of subgenre has been, how lazy it's really been over the last, really not just the last 10 years, last 15 to 20 years, really since, you know, filmmakers have felt a little bit more bolder or brazen to like bring these stories to a bigger audience because, you know, we are seeing more equality, more acceptance of these stories on film than we did before. And I think that filmmakers are generally getting better at that form of representation. That said, there is still this piece of like lesbian movie that just keeps getting made in terms of like you have these two women and they want to be together but they can't, and it's formulaic. It's like we know the beats, we know how it's all going to play out. And not since, though, I would say Portrait of a Lady on Fire have we gotten one that really like shakes it up and is about
Sure.
so much more than just that easy, like, we want to be together, but we can't. That's the conflict. What's going to happen? 90% of those movies end the same way. It's boring stuff. But this movie is so much more about the relationships between women romantically and platonically. Charlotte Rampling is the other lead actor here, she plays the abbess, and she like the leader of the convent. And she is like, I think, sneaky great in this movie, like truly captivating to behold.
Charlotte Rambling. I mean, she's always great.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah, I wouldn't say not sneaky great like Charlotte Rampling good in a movie, but more so like when you first meet her, you think she's one kind of character and she's just going to hit those beats the way you expect. But no, she comes in and like brings it in a totally different way than I was expecting, at least.
I mean, like I said, I think she's always great, and I think she excels at these type of characters. I felt that was part of the course. Like when I saw, not that she gets pigeonholed to certain type of roles, but I think she obviously excels at this type of character. And so when I saw her cast in this part, I'm like, I'm assuming this is where it's going to go. And sure enough, yeah. So,
well, I think it's so much more than that, though. She's not just like a grump who's like, I don't want them to be together. It's like so much deeper and more interesting than that.
Right.
And,
but that's what she excels at. Like, I feel like she plays a lot of those type of characters to great success, obviously. But I feel like that's like the Charlotte Rambling magic, right? You know what I mean?
I guess, but I mean, I don't know. I think I've got something a little bit more unique out of it than it sounds. I don't know. It's hard to talk about it, right? Without
I
us.
just think that it's not that I think I got less out of it. I think Charlotte Rambling is just so adept at like playing this type of character. But like obviously, like, I think she's just a great actress in general. I think that's basically what I'm trying to say.
Well, we agree there. This film, it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. It was in the competition for the Palme d'Or. Obviously, it did not win. But I do think, though, a lot of the films I've seen this year, I would say Benedetta is one of the more surprising ones. It is a provoking film, you know, despite, you know, we were both kind of saying before. I don't think it's trying to be provocative for the sake of being provocative, though. Did you get that kind of sense? Like, did you get the sense that this film is like doing something kind of different, or do you feel like it's just better at doing something that's already been done before?
I think it's Verhoeven being Verhoeven in that I think he indulges in the kind of what's the word I should be looking for here? The kind of crass exploitive qualities of the film, but like he doesn't look down on the fact that a movie can be a little risque and lean into like these nunsploitation cliches or expectations. But at the same time, as we were mentioning earlier, I think he's not going in this for a cheap rise, you know what I mean, either for himself or for the audience. Like I think he's obviously very thoughtful in what he wants to say here. I think he tackles he uses those expectations to feed into his broader ideas and what he wants to say with this character. And I think it's just a testament to how good of a filmmaker he is, that he can kind of have the best of both worlds here. He can make a movie that is provocative and taboo and play to the cheap seats in some of that ways, but he's also very thoughtful, and he can make a film that is talking about religion in a very elaborate and dense way. And so it just, that's what I expect from Paul Verhoeven. And so it wasn't quite a surprise for me to see him pull it off. It's just a great joy that he's still able to pull it off, I guess.
Actually, I want to say real quick, too, because I've been comparing this to other films like Portrait, and I was thinking of like other films like The Handmaiden during this, but I do think it's kind of its own thing. And I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here about just religion and how to grapple with religion. It's amazing to see from an 83-year-old man, who, again, he did write this. And I just think that he has something so progressive and, interesting to say about the Catholic Church that just sort of, it's not simplistic. It's not just being like, this is all bad, this is all terrible. He's showing a person who, like, her life, the thing that she desires conflicts with the other thing that she desires, and she decides to never compromise on it. And there's just something very interesting, I think, about doing that and using power to get what you want in a world that doesn't want it. And then it all sort of happens in a very interesting cinematic way. There's a lot of spectacle in this movie, a lot of intrigue. So I was pretty with this movie. Yeah. Seeing it on the screener and everything. And then I was engrossed with this film, even when it was gross. I really dug it.
Yeah. I mean, as I think you're suggesting, like, there is a way that he could have tackled the Catholic Church, where it's like looking down upon it and being like, oh, how foolish to, believe in such things and all that. And I think he clearly
a little self-righteous.
Sure. There you go. There's some more puns. But I mean, I think the man, I don't know if he's talked about religion in his other films. I think he's actually, I don't know if you've heard about this. Apparently he wrote a novel about Jesus. Like, it's like kind of like a reimagining of the Jesus story. And it came because I guess he had like a few month period where he felt like he was actually having a conversation with Jesus, which is really funny when you think about this film. Like, the fact that he had almost kind of a similar experience, you know what I mean? Is pretty fascinating stuff. But I think
doesn't he want to like actually adapt that into a movie?
Yeah,
I remember when he wrote it was like a decade ago or something, and he wanted to.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, well, for sure. But apparently, his next film is like a erotic thriller based in Washington D.C., but it's going to be from the writer of RoboCop and Starship Troopers. So I hope both come to be. I mean, I kind of thought this would be his last film, to be perfectly frank. So if I'm happy if he can make another film at all, but either of those sound fantastic. So I hope they both come to be.
If he's got more in the tank, let's see it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I hope he's like Clint Eastwood, just like making movies at 90, and as long as they're as good as this, I hope. I mean, like, as far as the religious allegories and the commentary therein, I think he, as I was saying before, I think he just finds a really fine balance that only a filmmaker like Verhoeven can pull off, where it is critical but not scathing of the Catholic Church or religion in general, and it can lean into these genre expectations and play up the kind of smitiness of the film, but have neither really conflict with what he's trying to say. By and large, if anything, they obviously complement one another. Like, it's this mix of high and low art in a way that is really, really fascinating. And like I said, only a director, I think, like Paul Verhoeven, could really pull that off so successfully. Yeah. So there you go.
I think that's the trick that he pulls off with this movie, that he pulls off in a lot of other movies, and it's funny, but it's not like a stupid kind of silly. Like, it's smart. And it actually has an intelligent thing to say, but it also has a really good sense of humor. Like, the outrageous things that we're seeing on screen aren't there for no reason. They actually like all serve the joke but not just the joke, but like the message too. I think that he's just really good at genre hybrids, and it's cool to see him do a genre hybrid like this, that, it has a signature style. It hits hard in a way where, you're always entertained by it, but it just feels to me like every scene kind of like goes together in a really, intelligent way. But at the same time, it's Paul Verhoeven. It's irreverent. It's not the kind of film that like you watch and it feels like it's a capital I important movie, but it just feels like a movie that he made and did his best at. And so I can't help but really have a heart for it. And so, yeah, he's still making good movies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like there are several things in this movie where I can imagine select audiences being like, "Did we really need X, Y, Z in this?" And I think based on what I've read from Paul Verhoeven being interviewed in the past and with this film, it's just like, did we need graphic sex scenes with this movie? I guess not, but that's just what I wanted to
But
do.
Do you need anything in any movie?
Right,
I love that response.
Right,
It's so
exactly.
great.
Yeah, and that's just like that just sums up Paul Verhoeven in general. Like I think everything is very deliberate and thoughtful, but he's also like, like I say, he's sort of impish and, almost, I guess, devilish in that way, where he's just like,
he's mischievous. He's a mischievous old man.
Right. He's just like, well, why not? Like, I mean, I like would it be a lesser film without him? Like maybe, I don't know who, but like he wants to, and it makes it more of a Paul Verhoeven film. And that's certainly something I think we should be championing and celebrating, especially with this film. It
is not a sin if you decide to go see Benedetta. I mean, I don't know. Depends on your religion, I guess.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not gonna.
Is it a sin to enjoy it? Maybe, but sometimes,
you will be forgiven. I don't know by who, but definitely by us.
To quote the film, everyone is allowed to have a sin, and I think that's certainly one that I allow myself to have, at least.
Same here. All right, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critical score is for Benedetta out of 113 reviews?
Now, this one is tricky. I think most critics are favorable to positive on the film because they know what to expect with Paul Verhoeven. But there are some critics, for instance, the Associated Press, I believe, gave this like a 0 out of 5 stars or something like that. And it was like some ridiculous review. I read it, but it didn't.
Yeah, legendary review. No self-awareness. I loved it.
I really hope the marketing team behind Benedetta uses those quotes.
Yeah, they should have retweeted it.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
Right. Like, this is what critics are saying about our film and all that. But I think it's like 72%. That's my gut, is what I think it is.
83%.
All right.
The age of Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Fitting. Yeah. Yeah. Great movie. And definitely critics are liking it quite a bit, a little bit more than you predicted. But what about audience score? We have fewer than 50 verified ratings, so who knows?
That's tricky. I'm gonna take a shot in the dark and say 85%.
Close-ish, 80%.
Okay.
So well done in your own way. You got pretty close. I'm proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, that is Benedetta. It is now playing in limited theaters. If you're listening to us from France, I think, and the Netherlands might have already played this too.
Yeah, like they're like, what took you guys so long?
Yeah,
We've been waiting.
Late to the party. Yeah, they had mass at 5 a.m. We're showing up next day.
Not to delay this anymore, but I think it's so funny that I saw this in AMC theater. Like the fact that this played in AMC theater is so bonkers.
That's
to
fantastic.
Me. You know what I mean? Yeah, but whatever.
All right. Well, yeah, you can check it out. It is 131 minutes long. I was actually surprised when I saw that. 131 minutes. This felt like 95 minutes to me. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah. I 100% agree. It was like just the point where I was like, it's getting a little long. I was just about to kind of check my phone to see what time it is, and that's when the credits came up. I was like, hot damn. Like, Paul Verhoeven knows when they get in, when they get out. Good for him.
Airtight. All right. Our last film for the week here. Come On is a film that was a bit of an awards contender earlier in the season. It premiered at Telluride. It's a black and white drama written and directed by Mike Mills. Mike Mills is one of my favorite indie directors. I love every single one of his films that I've seen, and that's 2 of them. Okay, the joke is he's not directed a lot of films, but the 2 films that he has made that I've seen, he made Thumbsucker as well.
Right.
But Beginners and 20th Century Women, really, really important films to me, just in general.
Very personal films, very heartfelt, meaningful films for obviously you and him. So, and me, of course. I mean, I like both those films quite a lot.
They're quite good. Beginners is my favorite from him for sure. Now, this one is a bit different from those in that it's black and white. It is a little bit more similar to Beginners, where we're not going back into the past, but this is a modern day film. It stars Joaquin Phoenix. I think the first big swing for Best Actor since Joker. The film also stars Gabby Hoffman, who plays a sister, Scoot McNairy, who I was not expecting to see in this movie. Also Molly Webster, Jabuki Young-White, and Woody Norman.
Jabuki being in the movie was my surprise. Like, I was not expecting Jabuki, and I was very thankful to see him, but I was just like, man, you're in this movie? Wow, how about that?
Yeah, and so this film, it's a pretty simple film to kind of describe. We follow Joaquin Phoenix as, he's unmarried, he's single, he doesn't have any kids, lives in New York, and his whole deal, his job is that he goes around and he interviews kids and asks them questions about politics and the future and just tries to like present, it's like This American Life, but Mike Mills's version. And he has a sister played by Gabby Hoffman who needs to leave. She lives in Los Angeles, but she needs to leave town for a little bit in order to take care of her estranged husband who is dealing with bipolar disorder, and she needs somebody to watch her son.
I don't know if they ever put a name to it actually in the film. Is it actually bipolar syndrome?
I think they said it in the film.
Okay.
Unless
maybe I missed it. No, I honestly don't know. I thought they didn't. I thought they left that vague, but I could be totally
I believe
wrong.
that's the case. I could be wrong. Now, her son is played by Woody Norman, who I think this is one of, if not his first performance as a child actor in a feature film. And he is a bit of a handful. It's heavily implied that he's on the spectrum, that he has perhaps ADHD, in the sense that like he has a very limited attention span, and he's a kid who. Say again?
Selective interest.
Yep, very selective interest.
Yeah.
He likes to sort of like imagine himself as like a totally different person, and he has kind of ups and downs. He's kind of himself showing early signs of bipolar disorder, but the film never diagnoses him.
Yeah.
That said, the film is really about how the two of them start to form a bond when Johnny, the character played by Joaquin Phoenix, goes to take care of Jesse, and the two kind of have their own sort of slice of life adventure together. This is a very sweet, heartwarming movie. It's very funny. It's one of those movies where the characters are really well written. It's not very predictable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it really isn't. It's a very A24 kind of film, and the kind of film you would expect from A24 at this point. But it's not a film that I loved, but it is a film that I appreciate, and I certainly enjoyed watching in the theater. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, unlike Jane Campion and Paul Verhoeven, I am well versed in the entirety of Mike Mills' filmography. I've seen all 4 of his films, and I've liked them all, maybe to various extents. But yeah, we got Thumbsucker, which is it's an adaptation, but it's like a coming of age story. It's like, kind of what you expect from like a Sundance first film or whatever. And then you got Beginners, which is, I mean, not to assume, but I believe it's like his film about his father. Then you got 20th Century Women, which is a movie for his mother. And then we got the Uncle movie here with Come On, Come On. I don't know if it's about anyone in particular in his life, or if it's another film where it's like him reflecting on his own parenthood. I believe he has 1 or 2 kids with his wife, Miranda July, who's also a filmmaker. We've discussed her previous film, Kajillionaire, on the podcast. But yeah, I mean, for me, I guess of the 3 films we're talking about this week, it's probably my least favorite, but that's not to say that it's bad. If anything, I like it quite a bit. Maybe even more than you did, because it's the type of film that when it started, especially with like the maybe self-serious black and white filmography, kind of the ponderous voiceovers, the sort of things you kind of expect from like an art house A24 movie such as this one. It wasn't like I was against it, but I'm just kind of like, all right, maybe this is a little bit, kind of Mills playing the expected beats a little bit here or something. And that's not to say that the story really varies beyond that. I think it plays out as most people would expect. But what really took me, I guess, halfway through the film was just how almost relentlessly tender this movie is, in a way that makes it weirdly a very interesting complementary piece to The Power of the Dog, in that they're both movies about the vulnerability and the inherent what's the word I'm looking for, like the unspoken, I guess, sense of being, I don't know where I'm going with this thought, but basically what I'm trying to say is that both movies look at masculinity in this very nuanced, patient, and reflective way, in a way that I think as a medium, we're starting to open up a little bit more. Obviously, other movies have looked at masculinity in similar ways, but I think now as a society, we're more open to this idea that masculinity can be a little bit more fluid. It can be a little bit less rigid as far as like men have certain expectations in their lives and society, and this movie it has characters who are obviously a little bit more shaded gray. You know, not to bake upon the fact that the movie is in black and white, but like, you know, both Woody and Joaquin Phoenix's character, like they're not bad people by any respects, but they have their own complexities. They have their own faults in a way that they're not unaware of, or at least Joaquin Phoenix's character isn't unaware of, but they're trying really hard, and they're putting their heart in the line in a way that feels very believable and sincere. And I was really taken by how lovely this movie is as a result. Like the fact that Mike Mills is able to talk about these fairly complicated ideas in a somewhat similar and familiar story, but in a way that feels very rich and nuanced and reflective. And I think it's not a movie I'm going to be thinking about as much as Beginners or 20th Century Women, but as I have reflected on it, I've grown to appreciate it more, similar to Power of the Dog in that respect.
I think the word for this movie that comes to mind for me is empathetic. Like that really is like the beating heart of this thing. Is it's about connecting with people and being able to understand others and feel their emotions. And
Sure.
In regards to what you were saying about, I mean, first of all, I want to say that I don't think this is about an uncle that Mike Mills have. I think he considers himself the uncle. I think he sees himself as the Joaquin Phoenix character in the same way he sees himself as Ewan McGregor in Beginners. And I think that's partly why this movie hit me necessarily, because when I'm watching this movie, I'm thinking like, I have 9 nieces and nephews. I have a lot. I've been an uncle since I was 13.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, like I love them more than I can describe. Like, I love my nieces and nephews. I don't get to see them very often. And when I do, though, there's nothing like being an uncle. Like, there's no other experience I've had that comes close to it. I don't have any kids. I have no idea how they're going to contrast and how they're going to compare or anything like that. But I do know that it's a very special bond that we get in movies, but we don't get super often in movies to this like level of care and affection. And especially with this kind of subject matter, I think to what you're saying, I do agree that this is about a different kind of masculinity. And I think that I'm always trying to find in movies like, you know, ways for, you know, my fellow guys, my boys, to watch movies that are really good examples of really positive masculinity. I think one of the core things about masculinity that resonates with men is strength, having strength. I think the toxic form of that is strength through oppressing other people and putting yourself before others. But this movie shows a version of masculinity that is, like you're saying, it's tender, it's emotional strength. It's being able to weather the storm of a kid, because kids are unpredictable, they're tiring, they're impossible it feels. And it's not, I mean, this movie recognizes that it's not something that only men deal with. Obviously, there's, of course, femininity, and they have their own version of strength in that way. This movie is positing that men can fill that role and do it well, but it's hard, and it's not something that kind of fits the traditional lens of how men are seen as caretakers. And I've always found that very unfortunate. And so I really appreciate this movie on that level, because it just creates so much empathy for men of a certain age, men who don't do the traditional things. I mean, I think this movie is very purposeful. Like, he's not divorced, he was never married. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that he has a kid that he doesn't talk to. He's just never had a kid. He just chose not to do those things, even though those are things we expect from a man his age. And so stuff like that I thought was really interesting, really very A24, I'll say again. But I do agree with you that I don't think that this movie, for me at least, hit me anywhere as hard as Beginners or 20th Century Women. I'm not sure why. I think it's because maybe this film doesn't really go very hard, right? It doesn't really, punch like in a lot of meaningful ways. And I think it's kind of on purpose. I think it's trying to be a little bit more of a hangout movie, which I appreciate too.
I think so. I also think that, because his previous 3 films have this sort of nostalgic quality to them, I think he is a little bit more certain of what he's trying to say with those characters and all that. And like you said, like, I think his avatar is like the male leads in those films. So like, Lou Taylor Pucci, or how you pronounce his name, in Thumbsucker, I think that's a character he probably most identifies with. Ewan McGregor in Beginners, and I can't think of the kid in 20th Century Women. I apologize to that actor. But yeah, with this film, like I agree with you that it's his chance to look on the other side of the pond, like in that, like the previous films were his look at like him like looking up to like his sort of mentor figures or like the people in his lives that shaped him as a man. But now it's him looking at like how he's going to shape a man in his, you know, for the next generation. And I think obviously, as I've suggested or we suggested, all these films are very personal to Mike Mills. I don't know him personally, so I can't say with confidence, but I'm assuming as much based on what I know about the guy and what I know about his work. And so I do think this movie is a piece with his filmography, and I do think that it is a nice addition to it. I agree with you that maybe it won't hit me. It didn't hit me as hard as the previous two films because it is trying to be a little bit more casual. It is being a little bit more, I guess, yearning, or like these characters are trying to like kind of figure, the characters themselves are still figuring things out because maybe Mike Mills himself is still trying to figure things out this phase of his life. So maybe it is a little bit deliberately incomplete in that respect. So maybe it doesn't hit quite as hard emotionally, but yeah, I really like how the movie parallels the perspective of the two characters, as far as like the fact that like our adult characters are, you know, they're not like childlike, but they have this kind of emotional insecurities themselves, where it's just like you're kind of expected at a certain age to, you know, just have that adult mentality and like everything kind of makes sense. And you look back on the way like your parents were at that age, and you just kind of like, oh, at some point it's just going to click. And, you know, as trite as it might be to say, eventually as you get older, you kind of realize that like that just doesn't really ever happen. You just kind of get older and things just settle into a certain groove, whether you like it or not. And I like this movie, like you're saying, like Woody Norman's character, he speaks like more, I guess, like an adult. He doesn't speak like a normal kid. I didn't really find that annoying at first. Some people suggest as much, but I thought that was actually an interesting idea. Like the fact that Woody is more eloquent or articulate than other kids, but yeah, he's like, you know, also emotionally, you know, still not really sure of himself. And obviously he's a kid, so he's figuring things out as he gets older. But yeah, like at the same time, that mirrors how, you know, we have like these long stretches of film where Joaquin Phoenix's character quotes various texts, like the way that like what he's feeling, he's referring to all these texts, like this is how I'm supposed to be feeling in the moment. This is how I'm supposed to be feeling about the situation. But at the same time, like there's no real certainty in that. Like it's like, this is how I think I'm supposed to be feeling about these things. This is how I'm supposed to be expected to feel about these things. But at the same time, his character is obviously still adrift and he's still figuring things out. But he's at a phase in his life where he's like, well, I kind of just need to buck down and have some certainty and do these things. And so I don't know. Am I rambling? Does this make any sense?
You're rambling quite a bit. I love it.
All right. I don't know.
I almost went blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That's one of my favorite series.
Yeah, exactly. But does that make any sense at all, or am I just going mad?
It makes sense to me. I mean, this movie, it's so weird because there's so much under the surface. Like when you first watch it, it's like, hey, you know, that's simple and sweet. But then when you really like dive into it, like, especially with this kid, I think that he's like, well, first of all, I think this is probably one of my favorite child performances of the year. Just so much better, I think, than Jude Hill and Belfast. I mean, Jude Hill did a great job. I don't want to, you know, say anything negative about the kid, fine. But comparatively, I think this is a much stronger performance. To me, I don't know, it has something more meaty to say, something more surprising to say. Right. And what this kid has to do, I mean, he is doing a lot in this movie, and he's acting against Joaquin Phoenix kind of being a middle-aged sad sack, but also one who is a podcaster, which I gotta say, like, have we ever gotten a movie before this that had like podcasting as a profession, but like it was not bad?
Not bad. I don't know. I mean, like
the only one I'm thinking of in general is Tusk, but like,
yeah, I was thinking Tusk. That was what I was going to say as well.
It's happened before, but I don't think we've ever gotten it in a way that like kind of, I don't know, that takes it kind of seriously, but it's not a gimmick. It doesn't feel like a gimmick. It just sort of feels like, yeah, that's this guy's job.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with podcasting, as many people would expect, is that it's just not very cinematic. It's similar to writing. It's just not really, I don't know if podcasting is technically a profession, but it's not something that, for some people,
it's a huge profession. I mean, it's a booming industry.
It is. That's true. I don't want to assume like, cause like it's not like our job's to podcast, but we do it.
It's our job in a different sense.
Sure.
It's our duty.
It's our duty. Yes, that's actually the word I was going to use.
But it's not cinematic because we're not in a radio station. You can't have a scene where we're just kind of going around. It's like, Ashton, I need those files stacked. We're going to go on air in like 10 minutes. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that's like, I don't think this is like people would watch this and be like, that's not really like what podcasting is. And it's like, yeah, it's Mike Mills' idea of like podcasting in this sense, you know, and yeah.
But I do imagine that it's kind of similar though to like how an NPR podcast would be. Like I said like before, like This American Life, like I could actually see that as like this kind of, yeah.
Maybe I don't know enough about how NPR works behind the scenes to know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I know. I thought it was authentic enough. Like if it had been like, you know, him doing like kind of like in a basement with like three dudes with beards and they were all like talking about like, I don't know, a tabletop game, then sure. I'd be like, yeah, I don't think Mike Mills, you know what you're talking about, but
sure.
I don't think that's what this movie is.
We'll have to wait until the Campion movie, I guess, to get that or the Joe Rogan movie or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't have too much else to say. I mean, I do have an idea for a double feature. This is my double feature idea.
Okay.
Inside Out.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Inside Out is all about like forming a core memory, you know, as a kid and being in touch with your emotions, even the difficult ones. So I would totally like pair these movies together. I think that'd be super fun. What do you think about Joaquin Phoenix in general in this movie? I know you already kind of commented, but first of all, I think everybody in this is really good. I thought Gabby Hoffman tremendously good in this, and I was super happy to see her. Scott McNairy doesn't have a lot of lines or anything, but he has a really great like expressive performance when we do see him. But Joaquin Phoenix, I mean, I don't think he's gonna get much awards attention, but do you think he should?
I don't know if I'd give him like an Oscar for it. And to be clear, it's Scoot McNairy, not Scott McNairy. But,
I think I just said it kind of quick.
Sure, no worries. Just clarifying. To me, I think it's just fascinating as the film he makes after Joker. Because Joaquin Phoenix, at least in my opinion, one of our finest working actors. I think a lot of people would agree with that. And he doesn't really work that often. Like he's very selective in what movies he makes. And I find that fascinating. It has a kind of like Brando mystique too. You know what I mean? Like it sets it like he doesn't just get out to work all the time. Like when he makes a movie, he wants to make it for whatever personal reason. And I do think it's not a coincidence that he makes this movie around the time he's becoming a father himself. He just had a kid with
Rooney Mara. Just saw her in Nightmare Alley.
That's true. Yeah, we'll
with
talk
another
about that.
Man.
There you go.
Scandal in Hollywood.
Scandal in Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's a very intuitive, natural performance. It's what I expected from Joaquin Phoenix in this film. He has a moment where he does a Macho Man Randy Savage impression, and that delayed me to no end. But yeah, it's obviously a type of performance where I can see why, coming off of the Joker, which is deliberately meant to be like one of the most intensive performances he's ever done. Like he had to like lose a bunch of weight. He had to like kind of be in a manic state the whole time. I can certainly see why he chose to do a movie where he could just kind of like, you know, be a little bit closer to himself, at least as far as I can tell about the man. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very lovely, meaningful performance for him and for Mike Mills. I don't think it's a type of performance I'd give the dude like an Academy Award for, but I think it's another outstanding performance from an actor I admire quite a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one thing this movie does that I don't think we usually see from Phoenix, and I'm really happy to see it here because it really just shows off his range, is he's a really good actor when it comes to how he listens. Mm-hmm. A lot of this movie is him listening to a kid. And that's a lot harder to do as an actor than a lot of people probably assume. It's something that people don't usually think of. Mm-hmm. But as an actor, like, it's really hard to convincingly show yourself listening to another person without it looking like you're teeing yourself up for your next line. It's one of the more complicated things to do in a film, especially with a child actor.
Yeah. Or that you're like talking down to them or like, you know, being like stern wagging the finger and all that. And
you're actually listening to them.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this movie, that is a very nice like feather in its cap. And, it's something that, if I was compiling a list of like movies that are just especially good, good movies about listening to other people and being empathetic, this one would absolutely make the list. So it's not something that's like the best at anything, but it is a film that is just like really, really good at everything. And I don't think it has any like major flaws. Like there was no point where I was bored in this movie. There was no point where I was like, I just want it to end. I don't think it overstays its welcome. I think it's structured pretty nicely. It just, it doesn't pack a huge wallop. It doesn't have like something extra special that like really pushes it to another level for me, but I hold it in high esteem.
But I think it's a type of film that I can certainly see why certain people are like, that's one of the best films of the year, really hit me hard, like I was bawling and all that. Like it's a type of film that I think if you're on its register, it's very easy to be overtaken by this film's subtle graces. But for me, I would probably put maybe like my top 50 for the year. I don't think it'll be in my top 20 or 30 or anything, but it's a type of film that when I think back on, it's a type of film that, maybe a few years from now, I'll think back on how like a wry smile and be like, oh yeah, come on. What a nice, simple, sweet
pop
movie.
It in, dear.
Yeah. What a nice little movie that was, like, I'm glad I saw that. It's a good film, but I don't think it's like an amazing tour de force or anything, but it's not really trying to be either. So
sure.
Great. Yeah.
I kind of wondered too while I was watching. I was like, I wonder if I would like this even better if it was just in color. There was never a point where I was like, good thing that was in black and white. There were a couple of scenes where I think it does serve his feeling of like when he would lose the kid.
Right.
Like I think it is more terrifying in black and white.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell where the kid is.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, though, I wasn't sure if it felt all that necessary. But do you disagree?
I don't disagree. I don't think it would have been better in color, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I don't
know. I'm just curious. Like I'd like to test out the theory.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know why Mike Mills felt compelled to shoot it in black and white.
Especially because like Promising Young Women is such a vivid film. It's one of the things I remember the most about it. I mean, it's Santa Barbara. You kind of have to do that in color based on what the kind of movie it is.
But I think, I mean, if I had to assume, as I was suggesting earlier, I'm assuming it's because the characters are in this kind of like gray, phased out perspective, and they're like kind of uncertain about where they want to go and what they're trying to do. I think artistically, that's why he made it in black and white, but it could just be, he was just like, yeah, I wanted to do a movie in black and white. Who knows? I mean, that could very easily just been the reason. I have no idea. But I don't have a firm opinion on whether it's better or worse in black and white. I was fine with the black and white photography, though. I thought it looked nice. All
right, well, let's play our game. Rotten Tomatoes time. What do you think the critical Rotten Tomatoes score is right now out of 139 reviews for Come On, Come On?
My gut says 84%.
96%.
Wow, really? That's much
I would not have guessed it that high.
Yeah.
I would have guessed somewhere like 90, 91 at the highest. I might have gone even lower to the 80s like you. What do you think about the audience score?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's like, this is the type of film that I can see a lot of people being like, oh, that sucked. Like, it's a hard movie to get mad at.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, I feel like most people will like it. Some people just might find it slight. But the audience score, we have 100 plus ratings. So not a lot, but probably enough to build an opinion on. What do you think?
I would say, 88%.
A little off, but you never got to the spot on that you did earlier in the show. But 82%.
Okay.
So
my gut reaction initially was 79%, but I was like, no, that's too low.
Got to go with your gut when it comes to Mike Mills. I
guess so.
So. All right. That'll do it for our show. Interesting show. We talked about 3 R-rated films. I don't know when was the last time we did that.
Was this R-rated? I thought it was PG-13.
It's R-rated.
No,
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. They dropped the F-bomb a few times. That's right. Yeah.
And I think Benedetta's R-rated. I'd have to double check Common Sense Media.
I think it's actually unrated, if I'm not mistaken.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I think no. They rated it, I think, this past week. Actually, it's like freshly R. But
you're saying like it probably wasn't rated when it was playing in France.
Well, they have a different rating system, but as far as the MPAA, I don't think they rated it until either this week or this past week. So, like on the AMC app, it was like listed as unrated. So, again, I think it's so bizarre that movie played in an AMC, one of my local AMC theaters. That's so baffling to me. But whatever, I'm glad.
Same
I'm
here.
happy.
It is strange.
Yeah.
Next week on the show, we are going to be. We have a lot of films we could talk about. I think for sure we'll talk about West Side Story.
Seems like a given.
That's a given. It's getting critical raves, and it's I think the only wide release this week. We have some limited release things hitting, for sure. I think Red Rocket's going to expand to some more theaters. Don't Look Up hits limited release this coming weekend.
That one's coming out near me. Being the Ricardos is coming out near me.
Yeah, that Being the Ricardos hits limited as well. It's going to be. I think that one's going to be streaming like a couple weeks later, and then Don't Look Up will be streaming like I think on Christmas Eve.
Right.
We also have National Champions, which I don't think I'm going to check. I could check it out this week, but I know it. I know people are saying like, okay, it's J.K. Simmons, Tim Blake Nelson, Lil Rel Howery. You're going to miss it, and I don't know. I'm still contemplating if I'm going to see it.
I've heard it's not great. I get that one confused with American Underdog.
Me too.
Yeah.
The emails. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that. Oh no, not that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because it's like I saw that they're doing like early screenings for American Underdog, and it's like, wait, didn't that come out? Does that come out this week? Oh wait, no, that's the other movie. That's the National Champions or whatever it's called. So yeah, I get confused by those two.
The other movie hitting limited from I think Vertical is The Hating Game. Is going to be coming out soon too, which is based on like a novel. I think there's like a subset of people who are excited about that. I think Lucy Hale. I think
we need the Loving Game right now.
Yeah, that's, you know what, Will Ashton, I usually disagree with you on everything, but I'm going to agree with that. Based on what we're going to talk about, I hope we can, in addition to West Side Story, we talk about Red Rocket and Don't Look Up and Being the Ricardos. Those for me, like if we could do at least a couple, if not 3 or 4 of those, that'd be great for me.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think Red Rocket is going to be playing near me this weekend. I could be wrong. Maybe they'll announce it. I mean, it's not like I'm happy about that. I'd prefer if it was playing.
Yeah, you're not like relieved. Like, phew, dodged that bullet. That Red Rocket.
Right. I know the Harris Theater where I work is going to be picking up Souvenir Part 2. I know.
I thought you said Harris Teeter for a second, like a grocery store.
Harris Teeter.
I think you said it right. I heard it wrong. I was just like, that's a cool grocery store.
But we're going to be playing Souvenir Part 2, so I can finally catch up on that film.
Nice.
That's of interest to review. I know we've both seen Nightmare Alley and Swan Song, or the other Swan Song with Mahershala Ali.
Yeah, which those are coming out a little later this month. I know Nightmare Alley hits wide release the week after.
Right.
I don't know if it has a limited release before. And then Swan Song, that's going to be a little bit, that's going to be around the same time.
The embargoes, I believe, are broken for both. So we could review both those if we wanted to clear up the slate for the second half of December. But that's up to you, John. That's up to the listeners. We gotta decide. And I think the second half is going to be packed. We got Matrix coming out later. We have Spider-Man No Way Home. We've got Sing 2, Kingsman. Yep. We got a lot to get to. Parallel Mothers is the one that I'm like, I don't feel like the year is going to be complete until I see that. I'm very excited for that film. I have no idea when that's coming out to theater near me. Likewise.
Same.
I keep in vain trying to figure out when I can see Licorice Pizza and Tragedy of Macbeth. This past yesterday when I was at the theater, it was just like, hey, like I saw the poster, is Tragedy of Macbeth playing? You're like, oh, I don't know. And then when I was seeing Swan Song, I saw the poster there. It's like, hey, do you know when Tragedy of Macbeth's playing? They don't. They look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. I just want to know when the new Joe Cohen movie's coming
They're
out.
like, we've got Encanto. Like, you want to watch that?
Yeah, you want to see Encanto? You want to see Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Fun.
I just want to see. I want to see Licorice Pizza, and I want to see Tragedy of Macbeth. Why
they
is
hand
it so
you a
hard,
Venom
John?
Let There Be Carnage DVD? Yeah. Like
I'm a simple man, John. I just want to see these movies. Why is it so hard?
I saw Tragedy of Macbeth yesterday.
I'm very jealous.
I'm so excited because our conversation for that is going to be intense.
It's going to be a real Macbeth and Lady Macbeth level conversation there, I guess. But
I guess so.
I'm very excited to be. I'm sure I'm going to disagree with whatever you felt about the film, but we'll discuss that at a later date, hopefully.
Can't wait. That'll do it, though, for us this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. Connect with us on social media if you dare. And we'll be back to discuss those films and more or less. Who knows? Next time on the show. From the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Wes.
See you next time.